Mandarin Win. Welcome back to the homemade tofu tutorial. Now that you've got your soy milk made, let's turn it into tofu. This is where the magic happens, so let's get going. So the soy milk that we just pressed out, I'm going to bring it to a simmer, and I am going to let it cook for a few minutes to render it digestible before I coagulate it. And while this is coming up to a simmer, I get my coagulant together. Today I'm using calcium sulfate, which is otherwise known as gypsum. This is food grade gypsum. I purchased online. You can also get it at craft brewing supply places. And so for 6 ounces of dried soybeans, I am using 1.5 teaspoons of packed gypsum blended with half a cup of water. And all through the process of making tofu, you want to use water that you like to drink, not just like any old tap water. If you've got filtered tap water, awesome. But use good water, because eventually, you know what? The tofu only has soybeans, water, and coagulant. So choose your ingredients wisely. And while this simmers for a few minutes, you then want to stir it. So while the soy milk is doing its final simmer, I've got my tofu pressing station over here. So we've got our mold. This is the wooden one, and it's got a little bottom piece. I put it literally in the sink because this is great for draining. And I've got my liner cloth, which is a very thin piece of fabric. And I'll put it right in there. The top is nearby. I've got a mesh strainer, a ladle, and a bowl. Hey, that pot is ready. I'm gonna turn off the pot. I'm also going to turn off the timer. And at this point, you don't want to add the coagulant right away because it'll make kind of unattractive small curds. You wanna let the soy milk cool for a few minutes. And while you're doing that, letting it cool, stir it around. And this introduces cool air very quickly into the soy milk. So, you know, I trace a Z or an N, and this is a motion that traditional tofu makers make, but in a very, very large pot. All right, so we've got our cooled soy milk. I've got my coagulant here. I'm going to add 1/3 of it while stirring the soy milk. All right. Ooh, there's a skin that formed, so let's get rid of that. So doing my Z or my N, I'm going to rev this up like, 7, 8 times, maybe 9 times, 10 times, but I'm just trying to get this really roiling amount of soy milk. And then I will pour this in about 1/3. And then once I poured enough, I will cease stirring and keep my spatula in the center and then pull it out. Now I'm going to add another 1/3 of the coagulant. So you're adding the coagulant in 3 phases. And just sprinkle it on like that. And I'm going to tell you something, it's not always the same each time. So let's see what happens after it sits for a spell. And so we're going to let it sit for 3 minutes. All right, 3 minutes are up. Uncover the pot. Now I'm going to add the remaining coagulant. I don't know if you can see this, but it kind of is coagulating. So you see like some cumulus clouds forming there. I'm going to sprinkle this over the top, and as I sprinkle it, you can kind of see a little action there. So at this point, to work the coagulant in, I'm just going to stir like the upper 1/2 inch of the soy milk for about 20 seconds because I do not want to disturb any of the curds forming below. Do not stick the spatula in there and stir it around like one woman did in one of my classes, and she got kind of like a soy milk, thick soy milk curdy shake. So be very gentle. Do this for about 20 seconds and we will recover the pot for 6 minutes if we're using gypsum. You know what that means? The 6 minutes are up, so let's see what's happening in the pot. All right, there looks to be some separation. So let's do this thing again with the stirring the surface here. I have a feeling that, oh, my pot's like totally cooled down, because if I can rest my finger on the side there, that means that the soy milk has cooled just a little bit too much. So I can remedy this in 2 ways. I can go ahead and recover the pot and wait a little bit longer, which I think I'm going to do. And then if I have to, I will reheat the pot slightly and maybe add a little more coagulant. So as I said before, not every single time the tofu is going to be the same, all right? So let's recover the pot and wait for another minute to see what happens. Sometimes I hate that timer a lot. So we reheated. I'm just going to turn that off, see if that did anything. I'm feeling some more coagulation going, but I'm also thinking you can put the lid on a little bit more for another 2 minutes. You can also, if you're feeling a little impatient, you can add a tiny bit more coagulant. So here, I'm going to add like about 1/4 of the original amount of coagulant that I used, plus 1/3 of a cup of water. Sprinkle it over the top. So the reason why you're doing this incrementally is that you're really trying to put the least amount of coagulant that you need to get the process going. Soy milks, air temperature, it really, really makes a difference. And tofu makers that I met in Asia told me it changes with the seasons even. So go ahead and mix that in again. See how gently I'm doing this. And I'm going to put the lid back on. All right, let's see what's going on with this bad boy. We have coagulation. Now, to get here, sometimes I have to tell you what I do is I will increase the heat slightly from the lowest heat possible, and then I will stir this a little bit to just kind of coax the coagulant to move around into the hot soy milk, and then I'll recover and I'll wait. But this is what I'm looking for: cumulus cloud, separation of curds and whey. And you can really see that. So we're going to step over with the pot to the tofu pressing station. Hooray! Okay, so we're over here at the tofu pressing station. I've got my strainer, and what I'm going to do is put this like that, so that what happens is I get to separate the curds from the whey, and I'm using some of the whey to wet my mold. And what I want to do is get the fabric into the corners there. And once I get to a specific point like that, I can scoop up the whey and pour it into a bowl. Some people like to drink the whey because it's, you know, it's good. And at a certain point, I'm going to remove the strainer, and you can see it makes an indentation like that because the tofu curds are sticky. And I'm going to then scoop up the curds and pour them gently into my mold. Gently and quickly. And I'm going to fill up the mold. These are beautiful, beautiful, beautiful curds, as you can see. Voluptuous, rich. You just had to be a little patient with them, that's all. Go ahead and pour this into my mold to make sure it gets in there. And once that the curds are all in the mold, I'm going to, there you can see a little bit better, straighten things out a little bit. Then I'm going to fold up the fabric. Put the top on, and I will put a weight on top. If you want like a really, you know, softer tofu that's like a medium tofu, then use a pound. If you want medium firm tofu, use 2 pounds. 1.5 to 2 pounds. This is a 2-pound weight. It's 28 ounces of canned tomatoes, but once that you put it on a scale, it weighs 2 pounds. And you can then just set it on top here. To remove the tofu and flip it back over, you use the original top piece. Very handy, right? So you put it upside down like it was in the first place when it was in the mold. Flip over the entire thing, gently remove the fabric, and then at this point you want to put it in some water to cool. Like bread, for example, out of the oven, you want to let tofu cool so that it develops flavor and umami. So you can go ahead and put it back on its little platform and keep it that way for good looks. Or if you're like me and you're a little bit of a tofu nerd, you have what's called a tofu caddy, which is this little guy. And I put it in here like so. And this way, when I store it in my container, I can then pour water in here. Fill it all the way up. I don't have enough water right now, but you get the idea. Add water to cover the tofu up to the top, put a lid on it, and then you can keep it around for a few days. But I urge you to eat it within a day or two of making it. We made tofu. I hope you're gonna make tofu yourself in your kitchen. And for the instructions and a recipe, check out my website, vietworldkitchen.com. Also check out my cookbook, Asian Tofu. There are instructions in there on how to make other different kinds of tofu from scratch. But you can also just buy tofu at the store and make tofu dishes yourself. There's no problem with that. But whatever you do, I hope that this video helps you have a more wonderful tofu-laden life. You are on your way.